and welcome to yet another edition of World Today, where we'll be focusing on the historic impeachment trial of former President of the United States of America, Donald Trump. There's lots more when it comes to protests in Russia against Putin, protests in Poland against the abortion ban, and Karima Baloch being laid to rest without her family members amid tight security in Balochistan of Pakistan. Trump could become the first former US president to face impeachment trial when the Senate hearings begin on the 8th of February. While all signs are in his favor that he could overcome the trial, he still has created history by becoming the first US president to be impeached twice over. Let's take a look at why, despite all the opposition and disgruntlement against him within the Republican Party, he could very well be acquitted in the Senate trial.
This time I will administer the oath to the senators in the chamber.
U.S. senators took oath to ensure impartial justice as jurors in Donald Trump's historic impeachment trial on 26 January.
John Trump, former President of the United States, now pending. You will do impartial justice according to the Constitution and laws.
Earlier in the day, 45 Senate Republicans backed a failed effort to halt former President Donald Trump's impeachment trial. This show of party unity is being cited as a clear sign that the former US president will not be convicted of inciting insurrection at the Capitol on 6 January that left 5 people dead.
In terms of impeachment, look, everyone wants to put this awful chapter in American history behind us. But sweeping it under the rug will not bring healing. The only way to bring healing is to actually have real accountability, which this trial affords.
Senate Republicans strongly believe we need a full and fair process where the former president can mount a defense.
The Democratic-led Senate blocked the motion in a 55-45 vote that required the chamber to vote on whether Trump's trial in February violated the U.S. Constitution. Only 5 Republican lawmakers joined Democrats to reject the move. It falls far short of the 17 Republicans who would need to vote to convict Trump on an impeachment charge that he's accused of inciting the 6 January Capitol assault.
There is a political reality for Republicans, though, and that is that the more time that goes by already, we see more Republicans suggesting that they would not vote to convict, that they believe that they would be votes for acquittal. They have not said that directly yet, but all indications seem to suggest that it would be very difficult to get 17 Republican senators to vote to convict. That's the number that they would need.
As an impeachment trial clunks into gear in Washington, the former president is making clear to Republican senators that they need to remember him as a major force. On 25th January, his office announced that he was opening the office of former president in his hometown. The statement also reminded people that President Trump will always and forever be a champion for the American people.
And Republicans, as they weigh their own future, also would like a little bit of space to do that. They know that they have this major decision to make about how influential Trump and Trumpism is in the party going forward.
While Republicans debate their future with or without Trump, the impeachment trial is all set to start from 8th February.
Putin administration is facing stiff opposition from its own people, from supporters of Alexei Navalny. Russian courts rejected his appeal against his arrest, and since then, demonstrators have taken to the streets protesting against the arrest of this main challenger to Vladimir Putin. Alexei Navalny was recuperating from having been poisoned with a nerve agent in Germany and returned to Moscow only on the 17th of January to be arrested at the immigration desk at the airport itself.
44-year-old Alexei Navalny, the most well-known critic of Russian President Vladimir Putin, was jailed for 30 days on request by Russia's penitentiary service on his arrival from Germany. It accused him of violating probation terms from a suspended sentence on a 2014 money laundering conviction. Navalny rejected the charge as politically driven.
Все, что происходит во всяких этих химкинских, симоновских, басманных, во всех остальных судах, отделениях, полициях и прокуратурах, это демонстративное беззаконие с целью запугать. Еще раз хочу сказать, у вас не получится запугать. На самом деле мы большинство.
Безусловно, мы будем обжаловать, потому что закон полностью на нашей стороне, и обжалование, безусловно, состоится.
He now also faces accusations in 2 separate criminal probes. Navalny supporters took to streets demonstrating and rallied against the Putin government on 23rd January. To prevent further rallies, police on Wednesday searched Navalny's apartment, a rented accommodation where Navalny's wife, Yulia, has been living. Yulia was not allowed to attend the raid of their apartment.
Мы видим, что сегодня тот день, когда массово происходят обыски у сотрудников Фонда борьбы с коррупцией и явное предвзятое отношение, нарушение права на защиту. Я, как адвокат, считаю, что в данный момент права Юлии нарушаются, так же, как и права других, кому не пускают адвоката.
Residences of several Navalny associates and supporters were also raided. Navalny's brother Oleg was arrested during these searches. Police, though, did not comment on the searches, but Navalny's associates claimed on social media that they were connected to an alleged violations of epidemiological regulations from last Saturday's mass protest in Moscow. Demonstrations calling for Navalny's release took place in more than 100 cities across Russia on 23rd January. Nearly 4,000 people were reportedly arrested during the protests.
The Baloch in Pakistan have been fighting a long, arduous battle for equal rights and respect. Karima Baloch became the face of that fight in the international arena. She was found dead in Canada. Despite numerous threats to her life, she never wavered from the Baloch cause. But when her mortal remains were brought back to her hometown in Balochistan, she hardly got the funeral she deserved, with the Pakistani state machinery controlling the entire funeral and the last rites, even barring her own family from attending.
I ask myself that, do we deserve to live like this? Do we deserve to receive mutilated, trailed, acid-burned dead bodies of our friends and family members?
Even in death, Karima remained the rebel that the Pakistan establishment took her for. The Baloch activist was laid to rest in her hometown of a village in the KH area of Pakistan's Balochistan province. But it happened in the absence of her close family members. Without the people she was the closest to. Her husband and brother and other family members are scattered over different parts of the world, most living in asylum. When the mortal remains of Karima reached Pakistan, her family members who are in Pakistan were not handed over the body at the airport.
ना डेड बॉडी दे रहे हैं, अभी तक वो इंतज़ार में हैं और ये भी कह रहे हैं कि डेड बॉडी जो हम आपको रिसीव कराएंगे तो आप लोग इनको यहाँ नमाज जनाजा इनका नहीं पढ़ेंगे और उठा के सीधा आप एयरपोर्ट से तुम की तरफ या तुर्बत की तरफ रवाना होंगे.
The ambulance that carried the body was escorted by security forces, as was her family. The Pakistan government said it was for their protection, but the other reason could be that they did not want a hero's welcome for someone they see as a traitor. Her hometown was temporarily taken over by security forces and a curfew was imposed in the region while mobile services were also suspended. Local people claim that some of those who had come from near and far were stopped by paying their last respects. They were asked to go back, they claimed.
दरखास्त करते हैं कि आप लोग वापस चले जाएं. जो भी अगर जाना चाहता है वो जूसक वाला रास्ता इख्तियार कर दें.
जूसक वाला रास्ता भी बंद है ना, वो बंद है ना.
The funeral was so restricted that according to some reports, women were asked to carry the coffin to the graveyard. It seemed that even in death, Karima Baloch was breaking barriers. The presence of so many women at the graveyard, where traditionally none would have been allowed, spoke volumes of the leader she had become.
हमारे घर में ले दे के एक दो मर्द होते हैं, उनको या तो मनशियात में मुब्तला कर देते हो या फिर हुकूमत कानून के हवाले कर देते हो। हमारे भाइयों को लौटा दो। मुझे नहीं समझ आती मैं कहाँ जाऊँ, किससे दरख्वास्त करूँ, किसे बोलूँ मेरे भाई को लेके आए।
Shabi's wife's picture.
Karima Mehrab, known as Karima Baloch, became an activist in 2005 in Balochistan's Turbat area. She attended a protest over missing persons and that day carried the picture of one of her missing relatives. She later joined the Baloch Students Organization, or the BSO, a banned activist group in Pakistan. A few months later, she went into exile after terrorism charges were filed against her. In Toronto, she married fellow activist Hamal Haider Baloch and remained active both on social media and in human rights circles in Canada and Europe. Karima Baloch was last seen alive on 20th of December 2020. A day later, her body was found floating on Lake Ontario in Toronto, Canada. There were small demonstrations in Canada and Pakistan asking for a detailed investigation on how she had died. The Canadian police stated that they had found no evidence of foul play and concluded that her death was non-criminal.
Welcome back to World Today. Let's take a look at some of the stories from across the globe in World at a Glance.
Myanmar is tensed in fear that the army might be preparing to stage a coup again. In general election last November, Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy won the landslide victory and ensured another 5-year term in power. The country's powerful military, whose proxy party was wiped out at the polls, alleged electoral fraud. But the Election Commission labelled the vote only the second free general election after decades of military rule, transparent and fair. But the military remains adamant in its allegation and has threatened with a possible coup if its complaint was ignored. Protesters flooded the streets of Lebanon's port city Tripoli, objecting to a 24-hour lockdown that disrupted employment. They demanded government support to help citizens tide over the situation. The protesters set fire to several buildings in Tripoli. After hours of clashes, Lebanese military troops were deployed around the city in an effort to quell the rage. A 30-year-old died in the shooting. Protests continued after his burial. More than 220 others were injured in the overnight clashes. 27 January was commemorated for the victims of the Holocaust. The International Holocaust Remembrance Day remembers the killing of 6 million Jews and 11 million others by Nazi Germany and its collaborators between 1941 and 1945. Pandemic forced the commemoration ceremonies to shift mostly on virtual platforms. A team of 10 Nepalese climbers became the first to scale K2, the world's second highest peak during the harsh winter season. The team received a hero's welcome upon their return in Nepal. K2 is the most prominent peak on the Pakistani side of the Himalayan range and is second in height only to Mount Everest. A masterpiece from Renaissance artist Sandro Botticelli has achieved the highest ever prize for an old master at Sotheby's in New York. Botticelli's 15th century portrait of a nobleman, young man holding a roundel, went for $92.2 million. With this, the portrait became one of the most valuable of any era ever sold, and also the second most valuable old master painting ever sold at an auction. This Renaissance painting was last purchased at an auction in 1982 for $1.3 million.
Anti-curfew protests rocked Netherlands for days. The Dutch have already been overwhelmed with strict COVID restrictions. Implementation of night curfews led to rioting in various cities and parts of Netherlands. Here's a report.
Dutch cities wear a remarkable calm look on the fourth night onwards since the night curfews were imposed. Only the closed shops and the riot police that dot the cities remain as a reminder of the tumultuous 3 days of riot and protest. 24th January onwards, for 3 consecutive days, rowdy crowds of youth gathered to protest the government decision to add a nighttime curfew to the Netherlands' already strict lockdown rules. On 20th January, Dutch government proposed the first nationwide curfew since World War II in its toughest moves yet to limit the spread of the new coronavirus mutations.
Of course, this is a measure that is really minimizing our freedoms. It's something that we are not used to in this country. But again, I think we have to do everything that's necessary now. So giving up a bit of freedom is a thing we just have to do.
It all started in a village 80 kilometers northeast of Amsterdam on 23rd January night. Rioting youths torched a coronavirus testing facility and threw fireworks at police in the Dutch fishing village. The video went viral and the riots continued for next 3 nights. Around 500 people were detained and others were injured after being hit by water cannons sprayed by Dutch police.
Sorry? Ik ben het niet eens met de avondklok. In de zin van, ik denk niet dat dit heel veel effect heeft op het geheel. Omdat, ik denk dat mensen sowieso alternatieven gaan verzinnen. Dus normaal gesproken gaan mensen om 9 uur bij elkaar afspreken. En nu gaan ze dan om 3 uur met elkaar afspreken. Maar dat blijven ze doen. En ik denk wel dat er ook een club is die het niet doet. Maar ik denk het grotere geheel blijft gewoon afspreken. Dus ik denk het effect wat ze willen met zo'n avondklok zal er niet komen.
Ik ben het niet eens met het beleid wat er op dit moment gevoerd wordt in Nederland. De vrijheid, de beperkingen. We hebben het allemaal over de kwetsbare ouderen. En dat is zeker waar. Ouderen zijn kwetsbaar, maar er zijn ook heel veel jongeren die kwetsbaar zijn. En jongeren zijn voor mij de toekomst van dit land.
Hundreds of protesters in several towns and cities clashed with the police, looted supermarkets and destroyed shop windows. Riot police with shields and batons were called out and issued with emergency decrees to provide officers greater powers to conduct searches. Schools and non-essential shops across the Netherlands have been shut since mid-December. Bars and restaurants were closed 2 months earlier. The night curfew, on top of these measures, spread riots before it died down to eerie calmness.
Thousands protested in Poland as the government put into effect a ruling that disallows termination of pregnancies with fetal defects, amounting to almost near total abortion ban. The ruling, first announced in October by an executive tribunal, led to massive protests, forcing the government back then to delay its implementation.
Bo to jest najwyższy czas, żeby powiedzieć: miałam aborcję siostry, jestem z wami i to jest mój wkład w naszą wspólną walkę.
Hundreds of protesters responded to her call by gathering in central Warsaw and other cities across Poland on 27th January night. They chanted anti-government slogans and danced and marched. Poland's government, through social media, announced that the Polish Constitutional Court verdict restricting abortion rights is to become effective from 27th January.
1993 roku o planowaniu rodziny.
3 months ago, on 22nd October, the Constitutional Court passed a verdict that made terminating pregnancies due to fetal defects as illegal. It was a ruling against the main exception for legal abortions in the largely Roman Catholic Poland. Under the ruling, abortions are only permitted in cases of rape and incest and when the mother's life or health is endangered. It caused protests in October 2020, just as it did in January 2021.
Chcę, żebyśmy po prostu miały nasze podstawowe prawa. Prawo do decydowania o własnym ciele, o tym, co chcemy robić i czy w ogóle chcemy rodzić dzieci i w jakim stanie chcemy rodzić te dzieci. Nie chcę kiedyś zajść w ciążę i patrzeć na dziecko, które umiera mi po porodzie, bo ta myśl mnie przeraża.
The nationwide protests of October forced the Conservative Law and Justice government to delay implementation of the verdict that they now announced would be published in its official gazette, a step necessary for it to take effect. This has sparked another bout of protests.
Znowu trzeba będzie chodzić na protesty i to jest jedyna forma oporu, jaką możemy przedstawić po prostu rządzącym, że nie jesteśmy wcale zmęczeni tym, co się dzieje, nie jesteśmy znudzeni, nie brak nam sił i jesteśmy razem i że jesteśmy po prostu w tym wszyscy razem. Nieważne, czy mamy 20 kilka lat, nikt nam nie może zacząć po prostu niczego. Chcemy protestować wszyscy razem.
Przestańcie udawać, że to się nie dzieje. Przestańcie kłamać jak prawica i Kościół. Dosyć tego. Dosyć tego. Żądamy od was solidarności. Żądamy solidarności.
The new restrictions move Poland further away from the European mainstream. Opposition have accused the ruling party, PIS, of influencing the court in its ruling, a charge the Conservatives deny. The ruling PIS, since coming to power in 2015, has implemented several such policy decisions, such as ending state funding for in vitro fertilization. PIS also overhauled judicial bodies, including the Constitutional Tribunal. The European Union criticized this move by saying it has politicized the courts of Poland.
That's all in this edition of World Today. Before I go, here are visuals of NASA astronauts Mike Hopkins and Victor Glover, who did a spacewalk of about 6 hours on the 27th of January at the International Space Station. They're working to finish installing a European science platform and complete long-term battery upgrade work. The advances to the station's Bartolomeo facility can be used to further research in Earth observation, robotics, material science, and astrophysics.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.